hope y'all can hear me, but I am very excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you guys. So like Alina said, I am Christina and I am with Homestead Senior Care. If you can see our banner in the back, we are a company that has been here in the Riverside area specifically for a little over 20 years. And we provide care that comes into the home and helps any senior who might need a little extra hand at home. And so that can look like a number of things that we can do. We can do a little cooking, such as today, like housekeeping and personal care. So bathing, dressing, transferring, all of that stuff we can help with. And so that is a little bit about Homestead. And I am the marketing representative for the office here in Riverside. And I am, again, really excited to join you guys today. I typically do a class with the Janet Goski Senior Center called Cooking with Christina. And I know we have some ladies here on the call today that are from that class. And so I just want to say thank you for joining. The Janet Goski Senior Center is also providing some online events as well, but also check out the Riverside Medical Clinic Charitable Foundation events that they have. They're having support groups. There's a lot of resources online for people to use these days. And so I know it looks really different not being in person, but yeah, I just wanted to encourage you guys to check that out. And I, like I mentioned, have been doing this with the Janet Goski Center for a little while, and I'm honored to be your guys' guest speaker today. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and I'll just jump right in and we'll go ahead and get started. As you can see, my Santa hat, over here. I'm trying to get in the Christmas spirit today. So we are going to be doing a Christmas recipe. And as far as what it means by being a Christmas recipe, it's just a recipe that features some more Christmas type flavors in it. And I'm really excited to talk about what we'll be making today. And we're going to be doing a Christmas recipe. There will be an opportunity to interact in the chat. So Alina mentioned the chat feature. The chat feature is a great way that you guys can ask questions if you have them. You can introduce yourself if you would like. If you would like to introduce yourself at any point, just say hello and say, where you're Zooming from if you would like, or just, yes, where are you joining from today? That's exactly what you can mention in the chat. So the chat is meant to be interactive. And I would love to interact with you guys during this demo through the chat. And so if you guys have any questions or any comments or anything like that, go ahead and just put it in the chat. And I do try and see them or address them, or Alina will go ahead and help me out if I do miss one. So I'd love to hear from you guys. I, again, am excited to be here to be able to provide this recipe for y'all. And so without further ado, I'll go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be making some Christmas crostini. I know that's a weird word. So our Christmas crostini, I'm going to explain to you what a crostini is and where it comes from. That is going to be our recipe for today. It's going to feature some special holiday flavors in it. And that's why I chose these little crostini. They're actually an appetizer, and you can make them, well, technically they're an appetizer, but you could eat them actually whenever you want. Maybe not for breakfast, unless you put eggs and bacon on top of your crostini for breakfast. But these little crostinis are the perfect appetizer. They're perfect for munching on. They're also slightly fancy, but very easy. And so what I typically will do is I'll just go ahead and give you guys a little background. That way you can know, where does our food and these different items, where do they come from? And so I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a little background on what a crostini is. So a crostini is actually from Italian origins, which makes me love it all the more. I've shared this with those who have joined my regular class, but I did study abroad in Italy. And so when I was in college, I studied abroad in Italy, and maybe that's where my love of food sparked up even more, because if you can imagine, Italy just has the most delicious, tasty, wonderful foods. I could go on and on about how much I love Italian food. But that is where these little toasts is what they're literally translated to. That's where they originate from in essence. And so the crostini translates, like I said, to little toasts. And I will show you the size of the little toast that we're going to be using. This is a crostini before it has been baked in the oven and topped with all of its yummy goodies. And so this is the little toast we're referring to. And it's got a fun story as to how this came about. But it is said that in the Middle Ages, the peasants often used to eat the food off of their bread instead of plates. If they couldn't afford nice plates or anything like that, they would eat the food off of bread. And the crostini, what originated, or how it originated, was it was often day-old bread that wasn't really good for eating, like just taking a bite out of it, because it was probably a little bit too hard. But the crostini was great for after a day or so. You could put a little oil on it and then top it with some other things, and it would actually make a really good platform to be able to use other ingredients to add on top. And so they're now one of Italy's favorite appetizers. If you guys are familiar with bruschetta, or the proper Italian way to say it is actually bruschetta, so that is a type of crostini. And so these little toasts can be topped with yummy goodies like the tomatoes, the basil, anything like that. I could go on and on. I just really enjoy eating these little crostinis. So I'm excited to make them for you guys today. And you can make them sweet, savory, anything you like to top on top of them. And I will go over what we're going to be putting on ours in just a moment. So that's a little history on the crostini. And I see a lot of you guys interacting in the chat, which is so fun. Love seeing that. And so just keep putting in, any comments, questions that you guys have in the chat, and we can address those as they come up. All right, so the two types of crostini we're going to be making for our Christmas crostini. Also, you guys might be tired of hearing me say crostini by the end of this demonstration. The two types we're going to make, our first one is going to be a grilled pear, sage, and goat cheese crostini. So that one is going to be, pear is going to be our standout flavor in that one, because pears are actually considered a very wintry, Christmassy type flavor. So we're going to be using pears in that one. And then we're going to have our holiday cranberry, brie, and mint crostini. Those ones look like Christmas. So the cranberry, it contrasted with, the red cranberry contrasted with the green mint, is going to look like Christmassy. And so that's what's super fun about those ones. And the cranberry is going to be the standout flavor in that one as well. And I do see a question. Someone asked if there is a recipe we can print out. And there is a recipe. And I don't know if Alina is able to put it in the chat. If not, we can for sure get it to you guys after the class is over for today. And so this recipe will be available, and I believe it's online or a couple different ways. So we'll get it to you for sure. But great question. Thanks for asking that, Katie. Good to see you on here, or see your chat on here. So like I mentioned, we're going to be making those two different crostini today. And this is something fun that you guys can make for your family. There's also some ingredients here that you could take and you can make the same way we're making them and put them on other things. And I'll explain that in just a little bit. So we're going to start with just our ingredient list for the day. And so our first one that we're going to be making is that grilled pear, sage, and goat cheese crostini. So that's going to use about half of a baguette. So the great thing with these is you can buy one full baguette, and then I already cut it in half. So here's half of the baguette for the pear crostini. So we're going to be using half of a baguette, about 8 slices. And again, they're these little tiny slices just like this, about maybe an inch thick. So we're using that. We're going to use actually 2 large pears, and you're going to cut them in little thin slices. So I just have a pear to show you, but I actually already cut them to keep you guys from having to watch me just slice and slice and slice. So we have 2 large pears that we're going to use, which are lovely and delicious. Now I've put both of our cheeses for the recipes on one plate, but for the pear crostini, we're going to be using a soft goat cheese. So this is a little soft log of goat cheese, and we're going to be using that, about 8 to 10 ounces. We're also going to be using some honey. Now, I was just gifted this honey actually from some relatives who live in LA from a local honey farm, which I am so excited about. And so I was very grateful that they gifted it to me. So that is why it looks a little bit different maybe than typical honey, but we're going to be using some honey. Now, I would encourage you to use local honey because it is more delicious, but I am not opposed to having the honey bear on hand either. The little squeezy honey bear. So either one works. And I just want to say we're going to be using that honey today. We're also going to be using some brown sugar. So we've got some brown sugar for that crostini. We're going to be using, which in my opinion is just a staple of all holiday dishes, butter. Oh yeah, we're going to be using some butter. We're using some butter. We also have a pinch of salt. So I've got my sea salt grinder right here. And we're going to be using one of my favorite herbs, which is fresh sage leaves. Now, I should say I have a lot of herbs that I really enjoy. I don't often use the fresh, sage leaves that often, but I do really enjoy it. So we're going to be using some fresh sage leaves. And that is it for our grilled pear, sage, and goat cheese crostini. Super straightforward and simple. So not a lot of ingredients happen in there, which is wonderful. And I do see that we have someone joining us from overseas. Is that correct? From Australia. Welcome. That is so fun. I don't even know what time it is there, but I'm so glad you joined. So back to our recipe and our ingredients. We also have our holiday cranberry brie and mint crostini. And so that one is also going to be pretty simple. Again, half of a baguette. So you're going to use half of a baguette cut in 8 slices for that one. You're going to be using 12 ounces of wonderful fresh cranberries. And doesn't this just not look Christmassy or what? This looks so Christmassy. You could use this as a decoration. These are fresh cranberries. Don't use the already dried ones. Those will not work for our recipe today. We're going to be using a little sugar because yum. So we're going to be using a little sugar. We also have a cup of orange juice that we're going to be using, which this is literally a cup, but I also measured out a cup of orange juice, and that's in here. So we got a cup of orange juice. We're going to be using some orange zest. So I have these little slices in here just to show you, but the zest is down there. So we're going to be using orange zest, which just smells wonderful and so fresh. And so we're going to be using that. We are also going to be using soft brie cheese. So this guy right here, this is our soft brie cheese. Now, normally they come in a triangle, I would say. This one I actually really liked because it comes in a rectangle. So it's super perfect for putting on the little crostinis because you just slice a thin slice and then put it right on top. So we're going to be using soft brie cheese, which is delicious. As well as for that one, we're going to be using mint, which is so interesting. Cranberry, mint, orange, all those flavors together actually are pretty common, especially the cranberry mint. If you ever search for recipes with cranberry mint, a lot of cocktail recipes will come up or drink recipes. It's a very common combination. And so it's festive, it's fun. We actually ribbon cut our little mint leaves, or I did this. So ribbon cut the mint leaves, it just makes it look fancy. So nothing other than the flavor. I mean, it doesn't do anything to the flavor, but it just makes it look fancy on here. And that is actually all the recipe or all the ingredients that we are going to use. We have not done the recipe yet. So we're going to just go ahead and dive right into our recipe now. And we're going to start with our little crostini slices. So our baguette over here. So the French baguette is actually, well, I gave it away. It's from France. So the French baguette in this form actually comes from France. And I'm going to go ahead and pull out our cutting board. And while we chat about it, we're going to go ahead and finish cutting the slices because I only did half of the baguette. So like I said, you want to do it about 1 inch per slice. And so that way it'll give you about 16. You want to have about 16 little toasts for your whole recipe. And while we talk about the baguette, I just wanted to mention that our oven is already set to 350 degrees. But you will want to set that at the beginning of your recipe. I just already did, so that way it didn't have to heat up while we're talking and whatnot, and then maybe not be hot enough by the time, we're ready to put them in. So just want to mention that 350 degrees on your oven, and we're going to go ahead and cut our little baguette slices. So as far as the baguette actually has a fun history. So baguettes were, first formed in this fashion in France, which if anyone has ever been to France before, they know that baguettes are everywhere. They have baguettes at little stores, on the corners. They serve them at little cafes. They have baguettes really everywhere. And baguettes were created actually by a French chef. Now, I don't even know if you would actually call him a chef. So he was more so just a little, he was a cook in a cafe. And he used what was revolutionary at the time. And it was actually the first steam oven. And what the steam oven allowed him to do was it allowed him to be able to actually bake the bread and bake the baguette to where the outside was crispy, but the inside is soft. And that's what we love most about baguettes is, and we're all done here. So I'm gonna, this is like an arm workout. I don't know if you guys ever feel that way, but sometimes when we're cooking things, I'm like, my arms are getting a workout here trying to cook or cut all that bread. So back to the story about baguettes. So he was the first one to actually use the steam oven that was able to create this special type of bread that was crunchy on the outside and just soft and just so lovely on the inside. And I'm going to just angle this down just slightly. All right.
Christina?
Yes.
Real quickly, I just wanted to say for everybody, I put a Google Drive link in the chat, which you should be able to access the recipe card there. So if everybody let me know if you're able to access it. We'll also be emailing it out afterwards with the recording, but let me know in the chat. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Alina. Awesome. That is perfect. Great. Well, I'm glad. So for those of you guys who had questions about the recipe card, it sounds like it's in the chat. So hopefully that works for everyone. So thank you for mentioning that. That's perfect. What I'm doing right now is I'm actually just laying our little baguette slices on the tray so you guys can see what I'm doing. This is super simple. And it's very aesthetically pleasing right now. It looks all, unison and in a row, but you want 16 on here. So right now I've got 4 rows, 4 rows and 4 columns. And so that makes 16. And what we're going to do is we're literally just going to brush the top of them with a little olive oil and just a little nice brush over here. So we're just going to go ahead and brush the tops of them. This helps them cook really nicely, or I should say bake, because they're going in the oven. So they bake really nicely when they have a little thin layer of oil on top. And again, going back to the history of the crostini, they used to put toppings on top that had oil in them on purpose because they wanted to be able to soften the bread up a bit. And so that is why they would add things with oil on top, which makes a lot of sense. And I think we actually had a question. Let me see. Where did you buy the sliceable block of Brie? Thank you, Katie, for asking that. I will address that actually. So I bought this sliceable Brie. Now, if I'm honest, my memory fails me whether it was Ralph's or Vaughn's, but I believe it was Vaughn's. And so I think Vaughn's was the one who had the block of sliceable Brie in their little fresh cheese section. So not the sliced or not the shredded cheese section, but in the fresh cheese section, they had that nice block of sliceable Brie, which I think actually makes a lot of sense for recipes like this. So great question. If there's any other questions too, feel free to ask them. So baguettes, yep, we're just dusting a light little layer of olive oil on the top. And while we're doing this, I just wanted to talk about some of the differences in olive oil. So I know sometimes it's overwhelming when you go to a section of the grocery store and there's almost so many options, you're not sure which one to choose. Sometimes with olive oil, it can be that way too. It's like you get one and you try it at home, you're like, yeah, this isn't that good. Why don't I like this? Or, you get another, you try it, and you're like, oh, I like this one better, but what makes it different? And typically I use extra virgin olive oil. By the way, we're just going to be putting a very light dusting of salt on these guys, and then we're going to be putting them in the oven in just a moment. So while I continue to talk about olive oil, I'm just going to do this. So extra virgin olive oil versus regular olive oil. Does anyone want to take a guess by typing in the chat what they think the main difference is between the extra virgin olive oil and just regular olive oil? So you guys, if you would like to contribute to that question, you can go ahead and put it in the chat. Debbie said the pressing. I'm not going to tell you quite yet. I'm going to let people answer. So someone else said, I'm printing now. Okay. Any other guesses as to, and this is not the trivia question, by the way. So the pressing, the first pressing, I missed the beginning. Are you using Brie instead of goat cheese? Oh, Sydney asked that. We are using both, one on each crostini. There's 2 different types of cheeses. There's Brie and goat cheese. The pressing, a lot of people are saying the pressing, which is great. So I'm going to go ahead and just share with you guys. Thank you guys for contributing to that thought. So it actually does have to do with the pressing. And it almost sounds like depressing. I don't mean depressing, it's the pressing. Olive oil is definitely not depressing. But it actually is, yeah, so someone said extra virgin olive oil, the first press, yes. So extra virgin olive oil is taken and it is those, original olives, just fresh off of the tree. I was gonna say vine, but they're not a vine. So olive tree, fresh off the tree, and they are taken off and they are pressed, cold pressed. So there's nothing added to it. It's just the olives being cold pressed and made into oil. Olive oil, as it stands, olive oil without the extra virgin component to it, really is olive oil with other processed oils. So it's going to be different. It's actually not bad if you don't mind that. In my opinion, it does taste better when you use extra virgin olive oil for that reason. So we're going to go ahead and we coated these guys with some olive oil, a little bit of salt. We're going to put them in the oven for about 12 to 15 minutes. So I'm going to set it for 13, right in the middle. Well, actually 13 and a half would be in the middle, but almost in the middle. So we're going to set those in there and then we're going to get started with our other things. So these guys, we can say goodbye for a little while we do our other ingredients. All right, and I'm going to set our timer over here, like I said, for about 13 minutes. Great. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to get to the other parts of the recipe. So thank you guys for contributing to that. We will have a trivia question in a little bit where you guys will have an opportunity to win a prize. So that was not our trivia question, but I will ask for some participation with that as well. The next step that we're going to do, we're actually going to make the homemade cranberry orange zest sauce. So I don't want you to think cranberry sauce like the same kind as Thanksgiving. This is going to be probably a little chunkier. Well, actually, I don't know how chunky you guys eat your Thanksgiving cranberry sauce, but this is going to be a cranberry orange zest type chunky sauce. And what I meant earlier when I said we're going to be making ingredients that you guys could do and use for different recipes, this is one of them. If you want to make this, and if you want to eat it as an appetizer, you can also throw this over some cream cheese and you can eat it with crackers. You could use this on your turkey sandwiches. If you really like cranberry sauce, you could use this with your chicken, turkey, any type of poultry like that. You could use it for a number of different things. And so we're going to be starting this right now because it's going to take a little bit for it to be able to make, not too long. But we're going to grab just a medium saucepan. I'm going to put it over here and I'm going to turn this on. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to add the orange juice as well as the sugar, and we're going to bring it to a simmer. And while we do that, I wanted to share a fun fact. For those of you guys who were on my cooking class through the Janet Goski Center, if you were on that class a couple weeks ago, I shared this fun fact with you guys. But I thought it was fun to be able to share it again, which, by the way, we're going to use about 3/4 of a cup of sugar. So I'm actually just pouring the sugar in the measuring cup right now. But the fun fact I wanted to share with you guys was about cranberries. And cranberries there's a lot of cranberry making that happened in the Northeast because they found out that it was easier to make cranberries on using the bog type of method where the cranberries would actually float to the surface than it was to actually just pick them off. So they used a new method of making cranberries, which is why they're very popular in like the Massachusetts area. They use that method up there. But it was actually fun to learn that during I believe it was the Civil War, Civil War, Ulysses S. Grant actually ordered that the soldiers would be fed cranberries with their Thanksgiving meal, which who knew? But he actually ordered that the soldiers were fed cranberries for their Thanksgiving meal. And does anyone have a guess as to maybe why he would want them to eat cranberries for their Thanksgiving meal? There was something that was common back then, and also just for a health benefit. Why do you think that he may have wanted his soldiers to eat cranberries for their Thanksgiving meal? And I'm just going to add this sugar in here, by the way.
Christina, I'll help you by calling it out. So a lot of people are saying scurvy.
Yes.
And for the vitamin C.
Yes, I'm just going to go ahead and say, yes, that is correct. So yeah, the vitamin C helped the scurvy amongst soldiers, and it was just good for them to have a lot of vitamin C in their system in general. And so that is what I was looking for as far as why he might have ordered them to be eating cranberries for their Thanksgiving meal, which I just think is so funny. So great guesses, you guys. Thank you for participating in that question. And I would not want to get scurvy in that time. So I would for sure opt for the cranberry sauce over the scurvy, if that was a possibility. So it makes a lot of sense. Thank you guys for participating in that. Okay, so what we're gonna do right now, I'm not gonna pan the camera over here quite yet because there's really nothing to see. It looks like I'm just heating up orange juice, which that doesn't sound super appetizing, but it's orange juice with sugar. And so we're gonna allow that to simmer. So you just wanna get it to where it's ready to, it's boiling. You wanna get it nice and simmery. So that's why my heat looks like it is high, because you want it to be able to, simmer. While that's doing that, we're gonna go ahead and get the pan ready for the pears. So I told you this is a grilled pear that we're gonna use. And we're gonna come over here and we're gonna add our butter to the pan. So I'm going to chop off the tablespoon of butter. And so let me go ahead and chop that off while I share with you a little fun history and fun fact about pears. So pears are actually, believe it or not, one of the world's most, they're the oldest and most beloved of the cultivated fruits. They have been around for a long, long time. In my opinion, probably since the Garden of Eden. But they, who knows really where they completely originated from, but it is said that they actually have been around for centuries and centuries. And so also I'm just gonna go ahead and just move this around a little bit while we're talking. So that way the butter can get nice and melted. And we have a medium-high heat, by the way, over here. So as far as pears are concerned, it was interesting. Even Homer, in his book, Homer's Odyssey, he mentions pears. Roman elite people and farmers alike both enjoyed pears. Pears were just an enjoyed fruit among many. And so, if you can imagine, I feel like I have this image in my mind too of a lot of even like paintings, and Renaissance paintings have pears. There's just, pears were used for a lot of different things. And so they were considered a very, well cultivated and beloved fruit. And so we're going to actually turn that heat down a little bit. The cast iron sometimes gets a little hot. And so we want to turn that down just a little bit. I started to see a little bit of a steam that I didn't want steaming from it. But I am going to go ahead and add actually our brown sugar to that butter. So that is what is going to help caramelize our pears, is the brown sugar. And we do have a question. Do you think they added sugar to the cranberry? Oh, that is a good question. For their sake, I hope so, because the cranberries would be super tart without sugar. But I'm actually not sure if they added sugar to those original cranberries used for the cranberry sauce. That's a great question. That'd be kind of fun to look up for sure. But I hope so, because for their sake, it's very tart to eat cranberries without any sugar on them. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and add just a tablespoon of brown sugar, actually over here. And I'm gonna turn that heat down again. And I'm gonna make sure that brown sugar gets nicely distributed over the pan. This, like I said, is what's gonna be used to caramelize these pears. Now, if you notice, it's chunking a little bit too much. Like if it's not, let me go ahead and bring the computer over. And our little orange juice over there is sizzling, so we're good to go on that. But if you guys can see right here, the brown sugar sometimes does get in little chunks. And so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna try and make sure, and I'm gonna do this with one hand, just make sure as evenly as possible it covers the bottom of the cast iron skillet. So you just wanna make sure it's a nice even layer over the whole skillet. So you just wanna make sure it's, nicely covering. And it's going to be hot, but you want to make sure this doesn't get burned. The butter should help it, but you want to make sure this doesn't burn. And so we're going to turn our heat down a little bit. This thing is popping over here. It is definitely time to add our other ingredients. I got our little spatula. This is literally, again, nothing but orange juice and sugar. So it looks like orange juice because that's pretty much what it is. And this over here is our brown sugar mix. So I'm going to go ahead, and the next thing I'm going to do after I put you back up here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add our pears actually, and then I'm going to tend to the cranberry sauce over there. So what we're doing today is we are kind of flip-flopping between the two recipes for the sake of being able to complete them in time. But when you're doing these, you might be just doing one at a time. Totally fine. And that's a little bit more normal to be doing one at a time. But I also, whoa, our orange juice is almost overflowing. Woo! Woohoo! Got it just in time. You never know what's gonna happen. So we're gonna just add our pears over here. I slice them in pretty thin slices, and our orange juice is still having the time of its life over there trying to boil over that pot. But we're gonna try and prevent it by turning that heat down. And adding all of our pears over here and letting them sizzle. So I don't know if you can hear it, probably not, but you might be able to. Zoom sometimes surprises me, but they are sizzling because they're getting nice and caramelized. Now you want your pear slices to be decently thick to where they're not just flimsy, but they are pretty thin in the grand scheme of pears. And so you're gonna just place them over here. I'm gonna try and put all of them on the pan. If they don't all fit, no worries. That's totally fine. I'm gonna show you what we are doing over here. And I had a question. Did you peel the pears? No, I did not peel the pears. Great question though. They have their skins on them still. And then someone answered the Brie question. So thank you for answering. Wonderful. All right. So I'm going to show you guys, if you can see, our little pears are over here just sizzling. Yummy. I don't know about you guys, but I do love pears. I really loved when I was little pears that had cinnamon and sugar on them. Even those canned pears. My mom actually, I don't know if she's on this, sometimes she'll join in, which is super fun, but she would always have on hand this nice can of Del Monte pears with the cinnamon and sugar. And I don't know what it is about those pears, but I just absolutely love that taste. And so this is kind of recreating that in a way. You could actually add cinnamon to the pan as well if you wanted that flavor profile. And this is recreating them. And you can add this to ice cream even if you want to try that. You can add it to yogurt. You can add these pears. You can make more than you need and you can add them to other things if you would like. And those are going to be about 2 minutes on each side, or at least until they're caramely and ready to go. The pears are just going to sit for a couple minutes. And so right now I'm going to add what we need to our cranberry sauce to get that boiling. And so we've already done the orange juice and the sugar. So we're now going to add the orange zest, the cranberries, and a pinch of salt. So I'm just going to do the cranberries first without trying to get all the orange juice on me. Okay, perfect. So we've got our cranberries. And I'm going to turn this heat up again. Now they are in orange juice here. If you wanted it to be a little bit less orange juicy, meaning you want the orange juice flavor component to be a little bit less, you can do half orange juice, so half a cup of orange juice and half a cup of water. They just really need the liquid of the orange juice or the water to be able to pop in there. And so you'll see what that looks like in just a moment. I'm also going to add our orange zest and that pinch of salt. Now the zest is 2 tablespoons. Again, add more or less depending on your preference. But we're just going to put that zest in there. I love any type of citrus zest. I just think it tastes fresh. It looks fun. We're just going to do a pinch of salt, which is about a twist. And I'm going to show you real quick. So this is what we've got going on. Looks pretty, huh? The colors look nice. We're going to just mix all that in there, and then I'm going to tend to our pears over there. But I'm going to go ahead and show you when they start popping what these little cranberries look like. If anyone has made their own cranberry sauce, they know that it really does make a delicious fresh sauce when you do it this way on the stovetop with the fresh cranberries. So we're going to let those sit and simmer. And I'm going to tend to our pears over here. So we're going to go over here to our pears, and I'm going to grab something to help flip them. And I just want to go ahead and turn them over if they look done. You know what? I'm actually going to give these another moment. They look delicious, but I think they can caramelize a little more. And so I'm going to leave those. And it sounds like our baguette slices, our little Crostinis, are ready from the oven, which is totally fine if they're ready early because they need to just sit and they can be attended to really at any point throughout the recipe, meaning they don't have to be fresh out of the oven. You can let them sit for about 10 minutes or so. So let's go ahead and turn this timer off. And let's go ahead and pull them out. And while I'm doing that, since we are on the pears part, oops, wrong drawer. Since we're on the pears part of the recipe, I wanted to ask you guys, does anyone know of the famous company that will deliver pears to your door for Christmas? Or I guess they do it other times of the year too. Anyone know the name? They can type it in the chat if they would like. Let's see. You want your crostini, by the way, to be hard and golden brown. I'm actually going to put these back in there for another 2 minutes.
We have a few folks saying Harry and David.
Harry and David, David and Harry, yes. Either way, however you say, I mean, technically it is Harry and David, yes. That is correct. So good guesses, you guys. Has anyone ever had a Harry and David pear or been gifted them before? I have, and I have to say, they are delicious. Now, if you like pears, they're going to be very good. I mean, even if you don't like pears, these pears are impeccably quite delicious. And they are, again, those Harry and David pears. Some people said yes, some people said no. My trivia question for you guys today is actually going to be about these pears. And so let me just go ahead and set a timer for 2 minutes for those little crostinis, and then I'm going to ask you the trivia question. So the way that this trivia question will work is I'm going to ask you the question, and then you can type your answer in the chat on the right side of the screen. Oh, these are looking very tasty. So go ahead and type your answer in the chat on the side of the screen, and we will go ahead and we will address the winner, whoever gets the closest, and you will get a little gift card from Home Instead to you. And so our question for today actually has to do with those famous pear makers, because pear is one of our featured ingredients today. My trivia question for you, and try to use the honor system. We do use the honor system, so try not to look it up online if you can. But the question is, since we're using pears as a highlight, what year did Harry and David first begin delivering their famous pears? So what year did they start their company and first deliver those famous pears? Try your best guess. Try not to look it up if possible. And then again, I'll announce the answer, and then we'll see who got the closest in the chat. While I go ahead and tend to our little pears over here. All right, I'm going to just turn them over. They are looking delicious. You want the pears also to be soft. You don't want the pears to be crisp at all still. And these pears are going to be covered in a nice brown sugar, which makes them delicious. But it does change their color a little bit to a browner color, which is good. You want that. So we're going to go ahead and flip these guys over. And then I'm going to also show you what's happening over here with our cranberries, making sure we don't overflow. And it looks like we have a lot of answers to the trivia question. And so we will go ahead and I will share that answer with you guys in just a moment after I'm done flipping all of these pears. These definitely took a little bit longer than the recipe says. The recipe says 2 minutes on each side. That was probably more closer to about 4. And so it just depends on how much you want to caramelize them, how thin your pear slices are. There's a lot of factors there, and that is our timer. Let's take our crostinis out of the oven while we let these guys just continue to cook in there. And we have a lot of different answers, so that's wonderful. We're going to go ahead and take our little crostinis out. Oh, I was looking for this. It's in my drawer. All right, so let's take these guys out. They look golden and yummy, and they felt good when I felt them the first time, meaning they're firm. They're able to be, put stuff on them, but they're not soft in the middle, so that's good. Our pears are doing really well over here, and our cranberries, I'm going to show you in just a moment what they look like over here. They are also doing very well as well. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and let's see what people were saying for the answer to the question. Okay, thank you guys, so many of you for participating. We have a lot of good guesses. If there is a tie of the closest answer, by the way, we will go ahead and draw after the class. We'll draw a person's name and then let that person know, whoever the winner was. We'll let everyone know, but we will let the winner know, especially if they won. So the answer to the question, when did Harry and David, the famous pear company, when did they first start delivering their pears? It was, drum roll please, 1934. That is when they started. So you guys who guessed, thank you for guessing. We'll go ahead and Alina, if you could actually see who is the closest to that, that'd be great. If there was a tie for whoever was closest, then we'll have to just draw after the class. But 1934, isn't that crazy? So that is when they started first delivering their delicious pears. And they actually used a special type of pear that is, I don't know what the French way to say this, but it's like spelled C-O-M-I-C-E. So I think it's comis. That type of pear is the pear that they use, and it has a particularly very buttery, sweet flavor to them. And so that's just a fun fact about those pears. Thank you guys for contributing to the trivia. We'll go ahead and announce whoever the winner was very shortly, if not afterwards. I want to show you what's happened over here in the cranberry department. We are thickening up quite nicely. And these guys are starting to pop a little bit more. And so I'm going to go ahead and show y'all what this looks like. Now, if I turn up the heat any bit more, they're going to probably get a little bit too, it's going to overflow. Let me just say that. But this is our cranberry sauce right now. If you can see, the cranberries are boiling and they are also starting to pop. And it's creating this wonderful foam, which is a good sign. It means that the cranberries are bursting. So when heated, cranberries start to burst and they form this really nice sauce. This smells amazing. I wish you guys could smell this right now. It smells so good. It looks tasty. It looks festive. And again, like I said, it would overflow if I allowed it. I probably should have chosen a little bit bigger of a pot, but I'm going to turn that heat down just a smidge, so that way it doesn't overflow. And then I'm going to go over here to our pears. So these are our grilled caramelized pears over here in the brown sugar in the butter. And they are looking so delicious. They're still sizzling and having a great time in there. So we're going to leave them for just another little bit of time. Do I have any questions or any questions at this point? Any comments while we tend to these things and make sure this doesn't overflow?
Christina, so we did have a lot of people with some great guesses for your trivia question. It like I think the closest we have was Cynthia Ortiz.
Okay. Oh, wonderful.
1940. So I believe she was the closest.
Wonderful.
Congrats to Cynthia.
Congratulations, Cynthia. That's wonderful. Yay. Woohoo. So you will be receiving a little gift card on Home Instead. And that will be coming to you after the class. So thanks for participating, Cynthia. Awesome. All righty. And we had, let's see, when do you add the mint? That's a great question. So the mint is actually added at the end of the little crostini. We're going to put all the ingredients on top of the crostini, and we add the mint at the very end. And so we're going to be doing that at the very, very end. It's more of a garnish, but it's also the flavor that you want to be included as well. And so while this cranberry sauce just melts very nicely over here, the cranberries are starting to burst open more and more, and it's getting nice and chunky. I'm going to try and keep that from overflowing for sure. But these are just the fun parts about cooking, is sometimes it just, goes as you planned, and sometimes it doesn't. And that's what makes it fun. And so while that is just forming together quite nicely, I'm actually going to turn our pears off over here. They look really good. They've got a nice darker color to them, and they are going to still cook while they're in the cast iron skillet. So I'm going to turn those off, and I can also turn off our oven over here. Our crostinis are there. Our cranberry sauce is melding together quite nicely. So I wanted to talk to you guys about the two different types of cheeses that we're going to be using today. So again, here's my little cheese platter. So we have the Brie cheese as well as the soft goat cheese. And with goat cheese in particular, the one we're using for our pear recipe, I was thinking about it. I personally love goat cheese. I know people who do not like goat cheese. I think it reminds me of mayonnaise, not in the flavor at all. So it's not the flavor that reminds me of mayonnaise, it's the concept. I think people either love or you hate mayonnaise. It's just how it goes. People either love it, they hate it. There's not a lot of in between with mayonnaise. Maybe there is a little bit, but a lot of people either love it, hate it. I think the same is with goat cheese. A lot of people either really love it or they don't care for it as much because it's very tangy. But it's really delicious when paired with something sweet, especially honey. So that is why we have it with the sweet pear, with the sweet brown sugar and butter and everything. And the honey drizzle with the sage on top, it makes it so delicious. So I would encourage you, even if you're not a goat cheese fan, to try the goat cheese and give it a shot. Goat cheese actually is said to have a little bit less of the fat component, or even just a little bit, it's a little lower in cholesterol and calories from regular cow's cheese. And so it is a good alternative if you're looking for something slightly healthier. And so that is a little bit about our goat cheese today. Now, again, we have our Brie cheese. And Brie cheese I've used before in classes. I love Brie cheese. It melts really well. We're not melting it today, but it actually does melt really well, which makes it a really great cheese to use for anything that you want to be ooey gooey and just like pull apart delicious. We've done before like cranberry brie swirls and put them in the oven with like puff pastry. I've done those types of things before. I've also done brie. There's brie on grilled cheese. You can make like brie and apple grilled cheese. I know that sounds really weird. That's delicious. The brie cheese is just a very fancy, yummy one. And it's actually have said it comes from an area near Paris in France. And that makes sense because it's a very French, it's associated with a lot of French foods and whatnot. But it said that Charlemagne tasted this cheese at a monastery and loved it so much he helped popularize it. So Charlemagne helped get it off of its feet in a way. So that is our yummy brie cheese. And we actually had someone say Merlot cheese is also very good if anyone has ever used that. Yum. That does sound super delicious. And someone asked also, what can I use in lieu of goat cheese? That's a great question. So in lieu of goat cheese, you would want to find something that's also a little bit tangier, and maybe it doesn't have to be tangier, but a creamy cheese spread would be really helpful. Now, off the top of my head, I can't think of one. I actually do really love cheeses, but I'm trying to think of what would be best paired or switched out for goat cheese, and I'm not exactly sure what I would encourage you as far as that is concerned. You would definitely want something where you can spread it on top. And so that's a great question. If anyone else has any, suggestions for cheese to use instead of goat cheese, you can put it in the chats and mention it there. But I actually, off the top of my head, don't really know exactly which one would be best to use. I want to say even something like a ricotta cheese because of its spreadability factor and its flavor profile, but it tends to be a little bit more bland than it is like zingy, tangy. And a blue cheese would work. Blue cheese might be really good with the pears. That actually would be really good. So blue cheese, Merlot cheese. Oh, someone mentioned Merlot cheese. Where can you purchase Merlot cheese? Alina, if you have any insight into that, go ahead and you can answer that if you would like to. But I am a shameless plug for Trader Joe's items because I used to work there and I love all of their foods for the most part. And so you can get a lot of really wonderful cheese at Trader Joe's. They have a great cheese section and selection. And so that is where I get most of my cheeses typically. But if you have anything else to add to that, go for it. See, Trader Joe's, Costco or Vons should also have it. Oh, nice. So Costco, Vons, Trader Joe's. Does anyone, while we're talking about cheeses, and I'm going to turn this heat up a little bit, does anyone have a favorite cheese that they like? If you do, go ahead and put that in the chat and maybe share with everyone what your favorite type of cheese would be. And so if you want to, go ahead and share that in the chat while I finish up everything over here. All right. Maybe if you want to contribute that. I'm going to go ahead and keep stirring our little cranberries. We're actually almost done with our recipe. Our cranberry sauce is looking very tasty, and it's definitely popping in there. Let's go ahead and turn that heat up actually while we're here at the end. It should not bubble over as much because there's not as much liquid in it. Oh, Gouda. Someone said Gouda cheese was one of their favorites. Feta cheese. Ooh, feta cheese. Got a little Mediterranean in there. That sounds good. I have one of my favorites actually is this creamy Toscano cheese at Trader Joe's. And it's a Toscano cheese soaked in Syrah. So Syrah, like the wine, but it's this cheese soaked in wine. It is so delicious. Every time I get it, it's just delicious. But I really enjoy that cheese around the holidays or even just any time in general. That cheese is really tasty. But Asiago cheese, that's a really good cheese as well. Asiago cheese. Oh, the cheese I mentioned. Oh, Sydney, you've tried that Toscana soaked in Syrah. It is, I'm not exaggerating. I think it is out of this world. I love cheeses a lot. Funny story, actually, while we're mixing these cranberries and waiting for them to thicken a little bit. Funny story about cheese. I used to work at a summer camp in Yosemite when I was a college student, which was so fun. Oh, and you can hear the cranberries popping. Oh yeah, let me show you while I tell you my story. So here's the cranberries popping. If you can see, the sauce is thickening up quite nicely, and they are popping. It's boiling. It's just looking really good. The pears are over here staying nice and warm, which is wonderful. We're almost ready to plate the item in just a couple of minutes. And you just saw some of the rest of my kitchen that isn't as put together. So pretend you didn't see that over there. But that's just, life too. So as far as, I was going to tell you a story. So I used to work at this camp in Yosemite as a college student. And they had everyone come up with fun camp names that you had that were just obviously different than your normal name. And I had shared this fun story about how I loved cheese and I just studied abroad in Italy. And so I shared this story about how much I loved cheese, and they gave me the camp nickname Gouda. So everyone that summer, in the summers to follow that I worked at that camp, all called me Gouda, which I thought was actually very funny. And it was a fun camp name, but I'm like, that's perfect because I love cheese and that makes a lot of sense. So if you ever called me Gouda, now that might be a little weird in this context, but I would technically respond because it was my camp name. So Gouda was my camp name up there in Yosemite at the camp I worked at, which is fun. All right. So like I said, we're letting that thicken up. While we do that, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to talk a little bit about the herbs used. So sage, mint, sage, they're actually in the same family. Sage is an herb that in medieval times, it was said that it was eaten to be able to enhance knowledge or wisdom, which if you guys know the meaning of the word sage itself, it means someone who is wise. So that makes a lot of sense. And then mint grows so well here in Riverside. I don't know if you ever have had a mint plant in your backyard or front yard, but I have, and they grow like weeds here. So I would encourage you guys, if you want to ever have mint, grow them in your yard. They do really well here in Riverside. But we're going to go ahead. I'm actually going to grab my plate and we're going to do the little pear and goat cheese crostinis while we wait for the cranberry sauce to harden a little bit, or not harden, but thicken a little more. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to use about 3 of them for this demo, but obviously there's much more on the plate or on the sheet over there. But I'm going to grab my nice little plate and I'm going to pick 3 of our little toasts over here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, let me pan down a little bit. You can also see my not so clean workstation, but that's part of cooking. So I'm going to pan down. I'm going to actually just put the goat cheese right on top of them. And I'm going to just cover each of them with a little bit of the goat cheese. So you're going to cover the top with the goat cheese, and you can do a hearty layer, you can do a thin layer, all about your preference. So we're going to do that for each little slice. Now I tend to love goat cheese, so I'm going to put a good amount on each. So we're going to just get that goat cheese on each layer, or on each little toast. And again, these are super easy to make. This is not fancy as far as how we're making it. The presentation will look a little fancier. And so that's why these are also really fun to make. They are a fancy option for a not so fancy way of making them. I got a little cheese on my fingers. Okay, so we're going to do the goat cheese, and then we're going to go ahead and go over here, and we're going to grab some of our pear slices. And so, this is what I was looking for. A nice caramelized pear slice. Yum. You can put this, like I said, on your yogurt, over your ice cream. You can even top it on maybe like a cake if you wanted to, a vanilla cake. These have a lot of different uses to them. So I'm going to go ahead and put these nice grilled pear slices right on top over here. They get caramelized and oh so tasty. So I'm going to put about 2 per crostini. And so I'm going to grab some more over here. They should be pretty flimsy in that they're not like super hard and crunchy. You do want them nice and flimsy. So we're going to put them on top. This is the part that looks super fancy, but all of this, again, if I can do it, I think anyone can do it. It is not super complicated and hard to do. It's just, you know, it takes a little bit of time. Okay, so we're gonna put those pear slices right on top like that. So I know you guys can't see super well, but we've just got our little pear slices right on top of the goat cheese, on top of the crostini. And next what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a little bit of the honey. This is gonna be my favorite part, so I'm just gonna do a nice honey drizzle. And so look at this deliciousness, yummy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drizzle it, and then I'm gonna add the sage on the top. So I'm gonna drizzle the honey over all three of them. Not a lot of honey came out on my little drizzler, so I gotta go back. Okay, so let's just drizzle these nicely with honey. These are gonna be very delicious and sweet. That looks so good. Okay, let's go ahead and put a cap on that. Let's turn this off. That needs to cool for at least another moment before we add it. So let's take that off heat and let that just sit right there. So we've got our honey drizzled over each little crostini, and we're gonna go ahead and add our sage on the top. So sage, again, which is a fun fact about sage, is they mean, you know, literally translate to wisdom. They were said to have being eaten for that reason. We're gonna just drizzle it on the top, or I should say drizzle, just lightly dust each one with a little bit of sage. Okay. All right. And there you have your very fancy looking pear, grilled pear, sage, and goat cheese crostini. So that is crostini number 1. Super easy to make, delicious, and very impressive looking when you plate it like this. So we're going to do that for our first one. We're going to grab 3 little toasts over here, and we're going to do the second round, which is going to be our Brie cheese with our, you know, cranberry zest sauce. And so, and mint, of course. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to cut as thick or thin of a slice of Brie as you want. You can leave the rind on. So the rind on Brie is very soft and edible. You can leave it on. You're going to just place that right over the toast. Just a thin little slice. You're going to go ahead and just place on the toast like so. And you're going to do this. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually grab our little spoon over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add the cranberry sauce on top of each of these little crostinis. So we're going to go over here, and we're going to add this delicious sauce. Oh my goodness, yum. On top of each of these. Now, it's up to you how much chunk you want on your cranberry sauce. These are going to have extra chunk to them because, let's see, we're not cooking them enough for them to be like a sauce. And that's what I had mentioned. These are going to be a little bit, it's going to be a little chunkier than a regular cranberry sauce. And so this also has that orange zest on it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to top these then with a little mint on top to make them very Christmassy looking. So let me grab our mint. We've also ribbon cut the mint, which ribbon cut, I think I explained to you before, is just a special way to make them look nice. We're going to go ahead and just put some mint on top of each of these right here. Super tasty. Cranberry, mint, and orange are actually very commonly, like I said, common flavors to be found together. And we have actually created our Christmas crostinis. And that is our recipe today. These can be enjoyed, like I said, as an appetizer. They look festive. Look at that cranberry sauce just dripping down. That looks super good. They look festive. They're very easy to make, and they're tasty. They can be used as a meal. They're common as an appetizer, but really anytime you want to make these Christmas crostinis. I hope that you are able to enjoy them if you do make them with your loved ones or with yourself in the future. And so thank you guys so much for the time. Thank you, Alina, and thank you, Riverside Medical Clinic Charitable Foundation, for allowing me to come and share this recipe from my kitchen to yours. And I hope you all have a very wonderful holiday and a very Merry Christmas. So thank you guys for joining.
Thank you so much, Christina. That looks amazing.
Thanks.
I just wanted to say, I think there were some questions throughout. I think that we were able to get to most of them. The biggest one is that we will be emailing out the recipe card for those that couldn't access it. I apologize. Normally, we're able to share a PDF through the chat. I don't know what quite happened, but I will be emailing that out. And everybody will also receive this recording. So hopefully they can print out the recipe and then they can rewatch it while they make it.
Sounds good.
And then we'll follow up with a gift card winner as well. Congrats to, I think it was Cynthia.
Yes.
And then before we go ahead and wrap up for today, I just wanted to ask you, because again, I know you do other classes with the Janet Gotsky Foundation. So did you want to share real quickly about any other upcoming classes that you have?
Yes, great question. I forgot to mention that. Thank you. I do have another class next Tuesday at 11 a.m. and it is with the Janet Gotsky Foundation. And so if you're interested, you can go ahead and register online through their online classes, and I will see you then at the same spot in my kitchen next Tuesday. So, yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, I am putting our foundation contact information in the chat as well. If you have any questions and want to email us or call us, again, I apologize at the beginning there. I'm just getting over a cold, but I wanted to just say, again, we offer multiple free support groups. So Alzheimer's, brain injury and stroke, and prostate cancer. So contact us if you have any information, but thank you so much. And thank you so much to Christina and Home Instead. We really appreciate your time.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye,
you, Christina. It was wonderful as always.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Happy holidays. Thank you.